crisis we're in, and on every level, really. How does one not get overwhelmed by despair? How can one stay hopeful?
Yeah, that's very difficult. Anybody have it? Maybe this is where upekkha does have to come in at a certain point. One has to do one's best without being overcome by despair.
I guess, is that when the teachings of wisdom comes in?
I think wisdom is one of the things also that protects one from despair. Especially, I mean, I consider a model like this and consider what's happening in the human realm, what's happening, what we're doing to the environment. Even when I was in Copenhagen, during the time when that conference was going on, you see, our group wasn't at the conference in the Bella Center. So we were like meeting in other buildings and other centers for discussions amongst ourselves, and was the countercultural type of community, or the people who are awake and alert to what's happening to the planet. So to find out what's happening at the Bella Center in the evening, and I'm in Copenhagen now, I go in my hotel room, they have a television, so I look on CNN to see if they're giving any reports what's happening in the Bella Center. You know what the big #1 news item is? This is second week in December.
Tiger Woods?
Exactly, Tiger Woods. That's what's claiming the #1 spot in the CNN news.
The denial.
Yeah, and then you look at okay, before my Facebook page was pulled down. On my Facebook page, when I would read articles about this, about the destruction of the environment, all of the things that the carbon corporations are doing, when I would find interesting articles, I would put them up on my Facebook page. I would hope that like people would say, you know, I like this, or some people would put comments in, but I'm getting floods of these little electronic flowers. So-and-so has sent you this as a gift. If you like it, please send a flower back. So-and-so sends you a teddy bear. If you like it, please send a gift back. So-and-so gives you a hug. Send a hug back. So it's really difficult to face that. And
just getting back to the despair question, I think we've been talking around that in the earlier session about knowing one's limits, one's boundaries, and then going from that place of not overextending or getting the burnout, and maybe developing the positive qualities in mind of sympathetic joy and just being happy for the wins that we have, the successes that this group, for example, has had, and resting with that and saying, well, maybe we won't feed the whole world in our lifetimes, but we're planting those seeds.
I think the Sangha gives us strength too. I mean, when Ajahn Pasno says we won't heal samsara, but we do get strength from each other, and we do support each other. And I wanted to say, Bhante, I think those flowers, there's a way that some of us have to respond to this despair by becoming infantilized, just reducing things to such a level of simplicity that it feels innocent and safe to us. And it's very hard to apprehend what you put there, really apprehend it and take that weight into our hearts, I think.
And I actually have a story to relay. The day after my car blew up 2 weeks ago, I was in my apartment, which Bhante has visited, and it was about 11:15 at night, and I was sitting in the chair actually reading the Majjhima Nikaya, and I started to hear this regimented yelling coming from a distance, and I got up and I looked out my living room window, and there was a whole group of police officers with their guns out with 2 men on the ground.
Wow.
And what happened was, I later found out they were outside all night looking in the woods with searchlights. So down the bank from me, there's a river and there's another apartment building. So these two men came to rob the apartment. One was shooting from the outside in the window. The other one broke through the door. There was a child in the apartment. It turned out that there were drugs visible in the apartment, so they came to get the drugs and money and guns. And of course neighbors were calling 911 because they heard the shots. So these two guys ran up the bank into our picnic area and disposed of their weapons along the way. And then one of them was caught with 9 bags of heroin. So of course I was shaking when I saw this, but you know, it's difficult, you know. And then you think, you know, I saw them on the ground. I was watching this scene, and, you know, as the police are there with their guns, you know, until, you know, a van came that they could take them away, and I could hear the questions that they're asking them. And, you know, I thought, you know, wow, when they were born, their parents were probably so joyful. And, you know, how did their minds get to this state, you know, where they're living these lives? I mean, it's very difficult to process.
But just to come back to this point, it's related to something that Tom said, also your question. There's a story that I heard, I don't remember where I heard it or read it. There had been this sort of tidal wave that came from the ocean onto a beach, then it receded, and the tidal wave had thrown up many fish who were stranded on the beach, and then it receded. And one man had gone out to the beach and he was taking the fish, picking up fish, and then throwing them back into the ocean. Then another man came along and said, "What's the point of your doing that? There are just so many hundreds of fish that have been thrown up onto the shore. You're picking up these fish, a few fish, throwing them into the ocean. It's not going to make much of a difference." And he replied, "For those fish that get thrown back into the ocean, it makes a world of difference."
Okay, I just have a question. You know, this is the model, the Buddha became enlightened, and then decided for, you know, for the sake of humanity to descend. But this is like a very, what's the right word? Basically my question is, one doesn't really have to reach the top in